Hello everyone, this is my weekly um, video message to everyone. I have to say first of all that this week is really hard. I almost didn't want to do it this week, mainly because the news right now is just so inundated with what's happened with George Floyd and the tragedy of that situation and the response to it, and there's almost nothing good about any of that, and I'm just depressed about it and angry about it, and almost felt like I didn't want to do this video message this week, but it's precisely the right time to send the message out, and so I thought I would go ahead and suck it up and do what I have to do. You know, the tragedy of it is the whole situation is one that I do think I need to just mention. First of all, it's tragic on so many different levels. You know, first of all, it's tragic in terms of a black man losing his life, George Floyd, and his family. But the response has also been tragic in many ways. You know, certainly there's a large portion of people who's been responding in an appropriate way. They're hurt, they're angry, and they have a right to respond, and they should respond. But some of the looting and violence is just tragic, and not only the violence in itself, but the fact that businesses that were beginning to pick up and recover from the effects of COVID-19 are being demolished, and that's just going to, I think, exacerbate the whole situation with COVID-19 from an economic standpoint, as well as, unfortunately, more people getting infected and dying. You know, just totally apart from the George Floyd situation, I am reminded of the Lake of the Ozarks party on Memorial Day, and I think all of you know that a person who attended that party did test positive, and he probably infected, quite a few people. You know, when you look at some of the crowds that are gathering in protest of what occurred with George Floyd, I mean, they're huge crowds, and many are not wearing masks, and I just fear that we're going to go backwards in our war with COVID-19. But, you know, totally apart from that situation in terms of response to what's occurred with George Floyd, during my cycling this weekend, I witnessed a lot of things which makes me worry that we're not taking things seriously anymore with respect to COVID-19 infections. I saw on Hamilton Avenue, as I was cycling, a large gathering at a mosque of, it was probably 200-300 people. Some of the women, of course, were covered as is their custom, but none of the men. I really didn't see any masks on any of the men, and they were just congregating together as if there was not a care in the world. Then on Memorial Park in Royal Oak, I was cycling around that park, and people were playing basketball, up on each other, guarding each other. And I was thinking to myself, well, it was just a few months ago when the basketball courts were closed and you couldn't do that, and now people are out in full force and just disobeying any of the social distancing guidelines that have been put out. So I hope I'm wrong, but I am very concerned that we're beginning to relax a little bit too much and not take some of these measures like social distancing and wearing masks seriously enough. On a more positive note, I did write a message to the campus community about the George Floyd death and the tragedy of it. And during that campus message, I happened to mention that we're going to be the headquarters. We are the headquarters for something called the National De-Escalation Training Center, with Chief Holt and the police force being a major part of that. This was picked up by the Detroit News, and there was an article about it over the weekend, and then CNN is going to be interviewing me about it tomorrow. I do think this is something that is very necessary. We have to be able to train our police force better in terms of de-escalating situations. This is something that we've actually been working on prior to this situation with George Floyd. We've been working on it for about 6 or 7 months now. Already has some training sessions incorporated as a nonprofit, and was beginning to set up some regional centers when COVID-19 hit, and we had to put that on the back burner. But the timing, I think, is really right now. In fact, it's optimal for really focusing on this now, getting this totally set up, and getting the regional centers set up, and hopefully we'll be able to have funding to be able to set this up throughout many states in the United States, to be able to more effectively deal with police and protesters and others, subjects that police encounter, to make sure that situations like what happened with George Floyd don't happen again. As usual, I'm going to end with something about a book. You know, I was running out of books, and so I decided to look for some ebooks, and I came across a review of a book called, what was it called? Wolf Hall. And the reviews were good. There were 1 or 2 reviews that were not very good, but most of the reviews were really good. And I realized that I actually had that book. I prefer having a physical book versus reading on a computer or a tablet. And so I went to get my book that I had, and I couldn't remember if I had tried reading it before or not. But as I read the book, I probably read about 40 or 50 pages of it. I realized that I just didn't like it, and I just couldn't read it. And one of the reviews that were not very positive talked about how there were just too many names, and it was very hard to follow. And I had the exact same reaction. It's a book about Henry VIII and his desire to annul his marriage and marry Anne Boleyn. But like I said, I got to about page 50, and we hadn't even gotten to Henry VIII yet, and so it was a bit tedious to get to. So I decided to put it down, and lo and behold, I got a gift of a book on my through the mail at exactly that time, and it's a book by Richard Hauss. Richard Hauss is the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. He was here in February, in which a forum was presented. And he wrote a book recently called The World, A Brief Introduction. And I guess that's why I got the book, because we hosted the forum that they had here. And that's actually really, really good. I'm about a third of the way done with it now. And the reason why I like it is, you know, I think the news in our country is just really skewed way too much to what happens in the United States only. You know, every time I travel internationally, I really enjoy getting international news and world events, which we almost never get here. We don't know a lot about what goes on in the rest of the world, quite frankly. And what this book does is it kind of explains, by someone who's a real expert in this area, you know, what's going on in the rest of the world. Obviously not in terms of current events, but some of the geopolitical forces that are shaping the world as it is, And I'm finding it very fascinating, and I'll let you know more about it next week. Warrior Strong.